How do you pet-proof concrete? Well, this is a big application for our sealers. The concrete itself is very absorbent, very porous. Natural concrete is, if you looked under a microscope, you'd see it's almost like a sponge. So in a situation where you have animals and the potential for urine stains, pet mess, then it's very important to seal off the concrete, especially if you want to eliminate the odor and then make the concrete much easier to keep clean going forward. We recommend two types of sealers. One is a penetrating sealer, something that soaks into the concrete, doesn't really change the appearance of the concrete, but it will repel, it will resist that pet stains, water, moisture, contaminants getting into the concrete. The other option is to use a topical sealer, something that will put a thin layer, protective barrier across the top surface of the concrete, and again, prevent stains, prevent urine, pet mess getting into the concrete. It's important to have a good, strong sealer, something that's highly repellent, something that has a high polymer content, something that's not going to absorb and soften over time. Are concrete sealers toxic, and what's the impact of using them in pet application? Most concrete sealers are not toxic once they're dry, once they're cured. In their liquid form, you need to be a little bit more careful, especially if you're using solvent-based sealers. You're dealing with fumes, high VOC, you're dealing with chemicals that can irritate and burn your skin. So water-based tend to be more friendly. Still though, with water-based sealers, you recommend that you use protective gloves and eyeglass, that type of thing, for splashes, because you are dealing with chemicals. But water-based sealers have a low VOC, so there's less odor, less fumes when they're in a liquid state, and certainly when they're dry, they're inert, non-toxic to animals and pets when fully cured. What types of sealer are pet safe or good to use in pet areas? Well, we recommend using water-based sealers because they're much lower VOCs, there's no fumes, much lower odor than a solvent-based sealer. You can use either a water-based penetrating sealer or a water-based topical sealer. The penetrating sealers soak into the concrete, but the very top is open. It doesn't change the characteristics of the concrete. Really, you can't tell it's there, but it will repel or resist urine, pet stains, pet mess. And it's very good holding back the odor that you get when the pet mess soaks into the concrete. You can use a topical sealer, something like our U100. That will put a clear barrier across the top. This is highly resistant to staining, again is chemical resistant, and does a great job in preventing that odor. The difference between a penetrating and a topical, again, is that the penetrating sealer, the very surface is open, so you don't get any change in characteristics, but potentially you still can get some staining. With a topical sealer, you've got a barrier right across, so you eliminate the staining. But having said that, it could be a little bit more slippery than a penetrating sealer. In that case, if you're worried about slipperiness, then you would add an additive, something like a cover grip, into the U100 for extra slip resistance if you needed it. If you're looking for a pet safe sealer, here's what to look for. Well, you want a sealer that has good repellency, and repellency over a long length of time, right? Because you want to keep the urine, you want to keep the pet mess out of the concrete, but you also want to have something that's cleanable and won't lose its repellency over time. So a good penetrating sealer is one choice. You have something like our premium. This is a high polymer content, much higher than you'd have in a typical concrete off-the-shelf big box store sealer. And because of its high polymer content, it really works to repel that urine, but you can come back and clean it repeatedly without losing its effectiveness over many years. The other advantage of using a penetrating sealer like premium is that it doesn't really change the characteristics of the concrete. It doesn't make it more slippery, doesn't change the color, it doesn't change the texture. So that's one of the advantages of a penetrating sealer. However, the very top surface still is open, right? The penetrating sealer is in the concrete rather than on the surface. So there is potential for some staining. So your other option is to use a topical sealer, something like our U100, which is a tough, water-based urethane, safe to use around animals, around pets. It's low odor, it's inert when it's dry, so won't affect the, it's not hazardous to the health of the pets, to the animals. But it actually puts a barrier across the surface that will protect against staining, will seal off that odor, and will make the surface much easier to clean. And the U100 goes down in thin coats that bond to the concrete, and it doesn't lift and peel like a heavier or thicker coat, for example, like an epoxy. If you do want extra slip resistance, the U100 can be used with an additive like our Cover Grip, which is an ultra fine or fine additive that provides anti-slip friction to the surface of the concrete sealer. And we provide this Cover Grip in selected grades, so again, you don't really see it in the concrete, but you can feel it, and it is much easier to keep the concrete clean. Does sealer work over painted concrete? Well, a good quality sealer will bond to a painted surface, but it's only as good as the paint itself. It's the paint that's bonded to the concrete, so if that paint lifts, so too will the sealer. So make sure that the paint is in good condition, it's clean and it's dry. You may need to lightly scuff the surface to get a good bond. Make sure that you're using compatible sealers with a compatible paint. If it's a latex paint, you're better off using a water-based sealer, something like our Strong Seal Plus or our Strong Seal Wet Look, versus a solvent sealer that could cause the paint to delaminate or to emulsify. If you're using a penetrating sealer, then it's going to be necessary to remove the paint, because you need that concrete to be absorbent, and the paint will be a barrier to that absorbency. So in that case, you would have to remove it. How to seal concrete against pet urine? What's the application process? Well, it's important that the concrete is clean and absorbent. Whether you're going to use a penetrating sealer like the Premium, or you're going to use a topical sealer like a U100, we want the sealer to be able to soak into the surface and, if necessary, form a thin film, protected film, on that very top layer. So we want to clean off any existing sealers, any curing agents, any chemicals or paints that may be used, so that that concrete is absorbent. You can use chemical strippers like our Fast Strip or our Floor Strip HP, or you can use, you can grind a concrete and leave the concrete with a lightly grinded, like 100 grit surface. Test to make sure it's absorbent by spraying or pouring some water on the surface and looking to see whether it beads up. If it soaks in within about 5 minutes, that's telling you that the concrete is absorbent. If you see that water ball up or roll up, that's telling you that there's something there that's acting as a barrier. So assuming the concrete is now clean and fully absorbent, then a good water-based sealer is what we recommend for pet animal type applications, non-toxic and inert when it's cured. We recommend applying with a pump-up sprayer, low pressure spray, and putting a thin film if you're using a topical sealer, allowing that to dry after 3 or 4 hours. When it's tack-free, applying a second coat. 2 thin coats of a topical sealer is highly recommended. If you're using a penetrating sealer, that'll soak in, and you want to make sure that's fully absorbed. That's normally applied in a single coat in a higher application rate. So you flood the concrete, and it should soak in within about 10 to 15 minutes. If it hasn't all soaked in that time, then you'll brush it off or wipe it off. If that penetrating sealer soaks in within, say, about 5 minutes, then that's telling you your concrete's very absorbent, and then you want to come back within an hour with another coat, another flood coat, and that should all be fully absorbent within about 10 to 15 minutes. Once you've applied the sealer, it's important to let it dry till it's fully cured. We recommend for a topical sealer that you let it dry at least 12 hours to 24 hours before exposing it to animals if you're worried about scratching and claw marks. If it's a penetrating sealer, normally after about 4 hours. And you don't want to be cleaning that surface any sooner than about 8 hours. if you can avoid water or cleaning chemicals on the surface until that sealer has had at least 8 hours to cure, that's highly recommended. How to clean and maintain concrete around animals? Well, if you've properly sealed your concrete with a good quality sealer, your concrete should be much easier to keep clean. So the first point is you don't need to use harsh chemicals. Dirt, debris, urine, pet mess should be much easier to clean off the surface of the concrete. So avoid using harsh chemicals. High alkaline chemicals or very acidic chemicals should not be necessary. And if you use them, you can damage the sealer and or damage the concrete. So mild cleaners, something that has a disinfectant property, are fine to use. Microbial cleaners that remove odor, something like our CoverClean FG or AE, or our CT50 cleaners, emerald cleaners. They're all good cleaners that can be used on concrete in a pet safe environment or in a pet use environment. These cleaners are either ready to use, or if they're concentrated, make sure that you read the instructions and dilute them down. It's important to rinse off and let those cleaners air dry before you then open the surface back up to the pets, to your animals. What are the best practices for sealing concrete kennel? Concrete kennels, that's a tough environment for a sealer. We get asked a lot for this type of application. So we want to use something that's got good chemical resistance, something that's going to hold up to pet urine, something that's going to hold up to scratching, something that's going to hold up to pet mess and frequent cleaning, right? And we want something that's going to resist that odor that comes from unsealed concrete. So we would recommend either a topical sealer, a thin film, something that will seal off the concrete, stop it from being stained, stop the urine and pet mess getting into the concrete, but provide a barrier so that it's much easier to clean the concrete. So the U100 is our go-to product. This is a 2-part urethane, water-based, very tough sealer, very scratch resistant, and but very easy to keep clean over many years. If you don't want to change the characteristics of the concrete, you don't want to change its look, don't want to change maybe its texture, then the penetrating sealer is the way to go. And again, you want something that's got a lot of polymer in it, a lot of repellency to it. So our premium penetrating sealer is what we recommend. This has some of the highest repellency chemicals in the marketplace, much higher than you typically see in a big box store or off-the-shelf type penetrating sealer. The premium will repel oil stains, pet stains, food-based stains, urea, and is very, very water resistant. But it's also easy to keep that surface clean. These products are water-based, so they're safe to use around animals, especially when they're cured. They're inert, and you don't have to worry about any kind of health hazard. Pet-friendly silicone sealant. Well, silicones, that's a class of family that we formulate sealers with, penetrating sealers, silanes, siloxanes, water-based emulsions. They are pet-friendly. You can use them on concrete, and they will repel water and moisture and urine. For better protection, penetrating sealer, we recommend using a fluorochemical, something like our Pen 55 or our premium. These have a much higher polymer content in them. They are very pet safe, and they're also much more stain resistant than a silane, siloxane. So they're going to help against pet mess, urine, and other types of food-based stains or oil-based stain. Is driveway sealer toxic to dogs? I think any type of sealer, while it's in a liquid state, while it's drying and curing, you want to keep your pets and your dogs away from them. These are chemicals at the end of the day, and it's not good for them to get that on their paws or for them to ingest it. It might cause upset stomachs, it might cause irritation. Certainly water-based driveway sealers are going to be safer than solvent-based. The solvent-based sealers, particularly the ones from these big box stores, they have a lot of solvent in them. I mean, their solid content is about 15%. That means 85% of that sealer is solvent. So xylene, acetone, very toxic, and should definitely be avoided in the presence of pets and animals. Water-based sealers, water-based emulsions are much safer, faster drying, and certainly when they're dry and cured, they're totally inert. so they won't be harmful to dogs or to pets in general. How do you seal concrete naturally? I think it's good to use a good environmentally friendly cleaner, first of all, to prep your concrete. Something like our CoverClean HC or our CoverClean AE. These are microbial based cleaners that use natural enzymes and microbes to clean out contaminants, oils, pet stains, food-based stains. A great way, mold and mildew. These are good, safe, environmentally friendly cleaners. Allow the concrete to dry, naturally air dry, and then we recommend using water-based sealers. These are much safer to use, less pollution, less fumes, toxic fumes going up to the air versus a solvent-based sealer. Certainly when those sealers are dry, when these water-based sealers are dry, they're going to be inert, non-toxic and non-harmful to pets and animals in general. What should you look for in a pet-safe or animal-safe concrete sealer? Well, you want a sealer that's going to be very water-resistant, very resistant to chemical stains, to pet stains, to pet mess, to urine. That's a very important characteristic. But you also want a sealer that's going to hold up to regular cleaning, the use of disinfectant, the use of cleaning chemicals. You don't want that sealer to lift and peel. So one consideration is to think about penetrating sealers. They lend themselves to pet use, so sealing concrete that's going to be exposed to pets and animals because the sealer is in the concrete rather than on the surface. So something like our premium is a good choice, highly resistant to chemical stains, highly resistant to food stains, highly resistant to animals and pet mess stains. So that's a high polymer content sealer that you wouldn't find in a typical big box store. And because it's in the concrete, it doesn't lift and peel. The very top surface is still open, so if you want something that's an absolute barrier, then a topical sealer is a good choice. Something like our Strong Seal Wet Look or our U100. These are topical sealers that form a thin layer across the top surface of the concrete as well as penetrating into the subsurface. Again, because they're very thin, they don't lift and peel like a thicker concrete sealer, for example, like an epoxy would do, or a solvent-based acrylic. These water-based urethane sealers are very tough, very durable, and highly water-resistant, and hold up to repeated cleaning with disinfectant chemicals and surface cleaning chemicals.